Budget Day 2025-2026, promises and priorities, and it is important to put that priority on Tobago, our beautiful sister island. In that regard, we welcome with us this morning. Really happy to have her live in studio. Every time we touch base, it's via Zoom, but today we could reach out and touch hands. We could knock a glass, a matter of fact. Dr. Faith Brebner, Deputy Political Leader of the TPP, is here with us this morning. And, of course, you're in good stead because your Secretary of Finance, Petalan Roberts, also joins us to give that Tobago perspective. Ladies, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. It's wonderful actually being in the studio this morning.
Great to have you. And it's important to have that Tobago perspective because Budget Day, as we all know, the allocation, it more or less, about 4% of the national budget. There's been that call to get it to about 6 thereabout, which will mean more in the coffers to, I would imagine, develop and to create some more in the human capital and the potential, the limitless potential of the sister island. Let me ask you firstly, Deputy Political Leader, as it pertains to Tobago, the finances, what's your expectation? What is your wish for today?
So, I think having been in the executive of the Tobago House of Assembly for the last 4 years, it's going to be close to 4 years right now, we've recognized that the money that we have, we need to figure out how to make it work for us, right? And figuring out how to make it work for us gives us kind of 2 large categories. We have, and we've been experiencing something that we call tie-up money or chain-up money, and let me explain what that means. It really means us getting money, and because we have to jump through all of these hoops, we are unable to do what we need to do with the money. So, for example, we have the money to build a big road, but EMA running in and stop the project. You know what I mean? Or we have a situation where we have foreign money from maybe UN or something, and what we need is a simple letter that says, yes, you can go ahead and access it, and we were not able to get that kind of letter. It's really known as a non-objection letter. That is what we classify as tie-up money. What we are hoping to get from today's budget, though, is what we call smart money. And what does that mean? It really means getting the resources, whatever the figure is, within the environment that allows us to do the kind of human capital development or infrastructural development. And that means, for example, working closely with the government of Trinidad and Tobago. It means getting, if we need a non-objection, or simply even removing the need for a non-objection letter. It means ensuring that the state agencies that should be working with us are actually working with us and not necessarily working against us. So that is basically what we are looking for today. Because if we are in a situation, for example, where we get 20% of the budget, but it is tie-up money, we can't use it. But if we get 4% of the budget, but it is usable and it is working for us, then we can do way more than what we've been able to do. So that is what we are really hoping for. The numbers, yes, if we can get up to 6.9%, we would love that because that is what the DRC allows for us to do at this point. But even if we don't, we want to be able to be within a policy or an environmental space that allows us to do what we need to do with the money. And that is what we're calling smart money.
Never heard of the term chain-up money. Very different. Let me bring the Secretary of Finance in the conversation, Patel. THA continues to be the biggest employer in Tobago, yes?
Yes.
How do we move past that particular reality? Because we know much of the money that's given deals with the recurrent expenditure. How do we find ways to keep that economic wheel turning without that dependence on THA?
Thank you very much for that question, Jason, and thank you to Trinidad and Tobago and all your viewers. So firstly, let me start by saying I presented a budget in June. So, we have the same budget cycle, but we present a budget a bit earlier so that we can bring us for consideration in the national scheme of things. So in the budget for fiscal 2026, interestingly, there were 6 priority areas, and the micro, small, and medium enterprises sector is a large part, is actually a priority for us. And your question really answers, what I'm going to say really answers your question in terms of the government actually employing, in terms of the THA, about 32% of the labor force. And the government actually contributes about 46% to the GDP of Tobago. And therefore, we have to try to shift away from that. So we have, one of the priorities is to invest in the Tobago Development Fund. It's actually like a bank, it's a financial institution. It has already been established under the Division of Finance, which I lead, and that institution will stimulate, it will bolster, it will boost the economy by actually offering products and services that can assist businesses. So both technical support and financial support at various tiers and various levels. So to shift away from that government dependency, there's a deliberate and intentional investment in businesses in Tobago. We've already started that. We do have the Business Development Unit, we have the Venture Capital Equity Fund, but the Tobago Development Fund will go larger than that and broader than that. And therefore, that's the vehicle that we're going to use to actually shift away from that dependency on the government. Exciting news indeed.
You know, I was having conversations before the budget with lots of different leading personalities in Tobago, namely Dr. Soifat Angus from the ID and others who were critical of the money put aside for Tobago's development. They saw it from the perspective of, and just not Dr. Soifat Angus, but many others, saw it from the perspective of not just infrastructure and building better roads and putting up buildings, but they're looking at it, and you mentioned it earlier, the human capital aspect. How can we develop that human capital? And more so, what's the direction? Is it blue economy? Is it IT? Is it medical tourism? Is it digital nomads? I've heard many mention Tobago could be a digital nomad destination. What's the pivot at this point in time?
So that is something that we have been looking at. And coincidentally, everything that you mentioned above, we have been tapping into and we have been pushing. So for example, we have the Tobago October Carnival that is going to happen in 2 weeks. Yeah. That is a perfect example of us pushing into other types, and that is the orange economy, cultural arts and so forth. Tourism, again, huge areas that we invest in heavily, particularly because we need to have people on the island, we need to have a larger volumes of people on the island, and we need to manufacture mechanisms where that can happen. So those are areas, all of them. I have actually been having conversations about medical tourism as well and determining what's the best way to do that. But the reality is, though, and I would caution us to stick a pin, is that we will kind of surprised at the level of infrastructural development that we still needed to do when we became the executive. Because simple things like roads and drains and so forth did not happen or happened in a substandard manner before. So before we could jump onto some of the other things that we were hoping to just run with, we have to ensure that we provide those basic necessities for the people on the ground. So we have to continually determine how we do that balance, how we truly invest in future projects while we maintain the infrastructural and the other needs that are basic, everyday bread and butter needs for the people of Tobago. It's a delicate balance that we have to continue figuring out.
I mean, of course, when we consider the tourism product, I saw some of the challenges recently. Here, is there a hope that with the allocation, some could go into improving the infrastructure, improving some of the basic amenities that's needed for a vibrant tourism product?
Most definitely, tourism is top of the agenda. It's actually cornerstone of Tobago's economy. For tourism, we are looking at monetizing our cultural offerings. Things like the Tobago Carnival, improving and upgrading the airlift. We want to get into new regional and international markets. There are so many things we want to do in tourism because we see tourism as the impetus for us to go in. As a matter of fact, if we invest seriously in tourism, we will see that kind of national development and national diversification. Because Tobago is well poised for that kind of investment in tourism.
And I want you to elaborate, and probably, Deputy, you could also step in here, because I've always heard that there's been a kind of back and forth, as it were, as it pertains to the Tobago tourism product. There are many who want to see the brand names coming in and want to see that development of the product, but there are many who want it to remain rootsy. Toes on the sand, slippers. You could go in the village and pull a net with the villagers, eat a food by auntie and uncle. Yeah. How do you strike that balance? Keep Tobago, keep that authentic flavor, but at the same time attract probably a more high-end tourist? Because the complaint has been that some of the beds and the quality of the product it leaves much to be desired.
So what you've identified really is a critical point in us determining exactly the kind of tourists that the world sees right now, or the world is looking for, the kind of tourism that the world is looking for. We actually have been doing it, and if you look at examples like Castara, Castara is a perfect example where no matter the time of the year, if you go to Castara, there are tourists in Castara. There are tourists who leave wherever they come from, get off of the plane and drive straight to Castara, and they don't leave Castara for the 2 weeks that they are there. And they've been doing this for the last 10, 15 years. So that is a perfect example of us ensuring that we are able to maintain what makes Tobago sweet. The natural resources, the environment, the beaches, the people, the food, those things, but ensure that when tourists come, they are coming for that and they get that at a high quality. Now, the other thing that we need to recognize is that tall buildings and huge structures does not mean development. We need to work out within ourselves that development means when they come, they get the best experience. And the best experience may be in a wooden structure. The best experience may be downstairs of somebody's home, because you can go upstairs and have breakfast, have a real traditional breakfast with them. So it is up to us to redefine for ourselves what true development within the tourism sector is and how that looks for us. So for example, if you look at the Pigeon Point, the beach lining Pigeon Point there, we have just put some really nice wooden, colorful huts where that is development for us. That is improving the infrastructure for us, but it is not going in the large, high scale, tall buildings and that kind of thing.
So you're speaking to customer service.
It's speaking to customer service. It's speaking to us ensuring that whatever plant we put on the island fits in naturally with the island, and not necessarily trying to replicate something else that may have worked somewhere else simply because it worked somewhere else.
Because to me, that's what makes Tobago, that authentic,
correct,
organic kind of feel. It's not as commercial as the other islands.
Exactly.
Untouched, clean, green, safe, and serene.
But at the same time, you want to ensure your amenities and your basics
top of the line.
are top of the line.
Yes.
I want to pivot to an important criticism or a talking point, really. Again, I'm not in the Tobago space, so I have to obviously speak to the leaders to get some details, so at least you could refute or confirm some of what was said. Many people I talk to from Tobago in the Tobago Talk segment speak to the allocation, the money's coming in from the budget. Obviously, I anticipate more. I hope that more is forthcoming this time around. But many are asking as to the contracts being given out, some of it being outsourced, and the food not really circulating in the Tobago space with the Tobago contractors. I'm sure you've heard that particular criticism.
We have.
Could you give me some more clarity in that regard?
All right, so it's interesting that people will say that, and the ones who actually receive, the majority, you wouldn't hear them.
Yeah.
And I think that is purely...
It's propaganda.
It's propaganda and politics.
Because people say that plenty of the Trinidad contractors eating the big food in Tobago.
Well, not necessarily. You see, when people say these things, it has to do with specific contracts. And we don't just do large contracts, we do several contracts across the Tobago space. But the interesting thing with politics and people is that you would not hear when things are going right. You always want to hear a negative spin for sensationalization, and people just like bacchanal. But I'll tell you, one of the challenges that we face in Tobago, so you would hear allocations. The last allocation received about $2.6 billion. Of that, we only received 200 million, for development program, and then recurrent 2.599, and URP and CPEP 18 and 9.2 respectively. Now, how Tobago receives the allocation is not according to the law. The law states that we must receive the money quarterly, en bloc, in a whole, in advance. So it therefore means we are in October now. I should have gotten the monies for October, November, and December. And that doesn't happen because I think it's a cash flow problem, an issue. Both the former Minister of Finance explained that to me, and the current Minister of Finance did indicate that they do have a cash flow, a liquidity issue, so therefore we wouldn't be able to receive those monies. Now, when we receive monies like that, it's difficult for us to plan. It's difficult for us to do very large projects the way in which we want to do them.
Chain up money.
Yeah, so that's the tie-up
chain
she was talking
Yeah.
about. Another thing we face is that we have an overdraft facility that takes care of that funding, that deficit, that gap. So we utilize money we don't have. When the releases come, we put it into the fund account. However, there's a cost to that, a very high cost, because
Chain up
in
money,
Trinidad,
tie up money.
You utilize the central bank. We have a commercial bank, all entirely commercial bank. First Citizens is our banker. And therefore, because there's a cost to that, our liquidity issue is even worse than it's diminished, because the overdraft interest is not a parliamentary appropriated expenditure. The bank takes their money whether or not I have $10, $15 or $1 million. They take their overdraft interest, and cumulatively that reduces the amount of money I receive from the government.
Could this financial arrangement change? Because I would imagine you ever found yourself in a position where you couldn't pay salaries based on
Because of the overdraft, that has actually bridged the gap for us.
Okay.
Right? So the THA has been going on, and the wheels spinning and turning all the time.
Jump through the hoops to make it happen.
Yeah, we have to make it happen, because we cannot allow ourselves to have the people of Tobago suffer because of that liquidity issue. But we should receive the monies according to the law. The THA Act says that we should receive the funds like this.
What's the coordination and relationship like now with the THA and the central government? Clearly, I'm seeing the Chief Secretary way more cordial with this Prime Minister compared to what we saw with the last administration. Do you all anticipate this more or less, at least from the outside looking in, it seems very cordial as mentioned. Do you anticipate this could now transfer into a better arrangement for Tobago, and more or less just the general conversations between THA right now and central government, with this budget literally hours away?
So I want to take this. I'll allow Dr. Faith to also make her point, because I have been having conversations with the Minister of Finance, extremely cordial. As a matter of fact, he has been very frank. The former Minister of Finance, it was a bit different. It was more of a talking down, and you ain't getting that, son. Because there are some monies, and Dr. Faith spoke about that. Multilateral, bilateral relationships cause us to get some monies from international agencies for the oil spill. If we have a catastrophe in Tobago, there are some national funds that we receive from international bodies. It would come to the national coffers, but we don't ever receive them. We haven't received them in the past. But I'll tell you something, and I'll tell you one instance where we saw where the central government is serious about Tobago's development and Tobago's funding. This administration came in on April 29th. So I had conversations with the former minister and the current minister. Usually, Tobago receives its money, as I told you, quarterly. We're supposed to receive it quarterly in advance. We receive them monthly, sometimes whenever. Like as Secretary of Finance, I can't tell you when my next check is coming. It's not that predictable. However, at the end of the fiscal year, we are supposed to receive every single cent according to the Appropriation Act.
Yeah.
This year, we received every single dollar from the government.
For the first time in decades. Actually, when the former Minister of Finance was in office, I wrote him to tell him these are the shortfalls from the previous years. Because let me explain. Tobago collects or generates its own revenue in terms of tax and non-tax revenue. So if you pay as you earn, it's in Tobago, it stays in Tobago and is offset against the parliamentary appropriation. So let's say the parliamentary appropriation is $100, and we receive, in terms of tax and non-tax, $20. The government will just give us $80 to bridge that gap, to make up the entire appropriation. However, in the past, we were always short. We never received the 80, we received 60 and so forth. So I did a memo to the minister indicating this is the shortfall over the last 7 years. And that came up to about $166 million cumulatively for a 7-year period. But the minister said, you know, as the financial year ends, it's difficult to fund that. And I'm saying to him, well, you know what that does? I can't pay all my bills because according to the Appropriation Act, people are looking at the act, looking at the budget and saying this is what Tobago receives. But in reality,
we don't receive that amount. However, in this last fiscal that we just ended, we received every single cent. And I think that I want to commend the minister for that, because our conversations have been cordial and the actions have been cordial as well.
Dr. Faith, you want to weigh in?
I just want to add that our stance in the Tobago House of Assembly has not changed. We have always come into this understanding that we need to work with the central government of Trinidad and Tobago. The difference that you are seeing now is that this central government of Trinidad and Tobago seems to now understand that they need to respect, and they need to also have that same mutual respect for the Tobago House of Assembly. So the political leader and the chief secretary is not being more cordial with this one than the other. He has always been very cordial. It is what you are seeing now is a difference in the reciprocation of that mutual respect, and that is what we are excited about. And that is why when we go back to listening to Minister Tanku this afternoon again, we again are going to be listening very carefully to see how we could ensure that whatever is the dollar figure, whatever is the percentage that we get, that it is encouraged, it is enveloped in an environment that is an enabling environment. And it is that enabling environment that moves the chain of money to the smart money. And these are the kinds of things we are talking about that will make a huge difference to what happens on the island.
As we pull the curtains down, I want to get a final perspective. I'll start with our Secretary of Finance in the THA, Petal and Roberts. Your biggest wish, obviously the minister will stand later on. Whether he speaks for 3 hours, 2 hours, we don't know. But we hope the potency in what he says brings a certain, optimism and, again, that ability to tap into the limitless potential that is indeed Tobago. What's your biggest budget wish?
My biggest budget wish is that every Tobagonian gets their dollar. And let me tell you what that means. The Tobago population, as a percentage of the national population, is about 5.1%. We have been receiving 4.3% over the last 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. And that means that some sector of Tobago is not receiving a cent. If we receive at least 5.1%, Jason, I would be very happy. Let me tell you another thing. Do you see the development
side of it,
deficiencies that we're seeing in Tobago?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see us bridging that gap. And if we get the finances, we get the resources. Dr. Faith spoke about non-objection letters. We have been getting no non-objection letters from the former government. We have been just asking. IDB has some funds. We want to access for technical support, technical assistance. We want to do training, and all we need is a non-objection letter. And that was a painful experience for us. We want to see a clear path for Tobago. We want to see mutual respect. Mm-hmm. We want to see a fair, just, and reasonable share of the budget, and that is 5.1%. And if we can get that, I'll be very happy to manage that for the people of Tobago. It has been very difficult for us because our needs are great. Mm-hmm. In 2021, we actually inherited about $1 billion in liabilities. I have not been able to settle those liabilities. So you're hearing people in the Tobago space saying that they're not receiving monies. We just don't have it. With our development budget of $200 million, it's impossible to pay liabilities and then advance the development agenda for Tobago.
Dr. Brabner, your budget wish list.
So my budget wish is really not for what the minister will say, because my colleague expressed what those wishes are. My budget wish is really for Tobagonians to tune in and to actively work with us to realize the potential that will come out of this newfound positivity. My wish is them, each of them, understanding that in this small space, that their responsibility, as huge or as small as it may be, is a part of us creating this thing that we in the Tobago House of Assembly. It's a view we have of the island, a futuristic view, which is to make Tobago the greatest little island on the planet. And what we are doing is asking every Tobagonian, and even asking every Trinidadian to walk with us to ensure that we are able to realize that, because we do honestly believe that we could make Tobago the greatest little island on the planet.
Thank you so much, ladies. Really appreciate your time,
Thank you.
your perspective,
Yes.
the clarity on some of the major talking points.
Yes.
And we look towards the Parliament later on today to see what's the allocation for Tobago and indeed if this allocation will assist with the development and the untapping, the unlocking, as it were, of Tobago's amazing potential. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
for being.
Yes, indeed. We want to take you to a video, another presentation from Ambika Datu, our colleague from the newsroom, who was really giving us, through her report, a deep look into Tobago's allocation. So, in keeping with our discussion just now, let's exit with this report from Ambika. Enjoy.